All right, so let's start with the big story that we're tracking on WION in this hour, where the Rajapaksas in Sri Lanka have registered a landslide victory in the parliamentary polls. The Sri Lanka's ruling Rajapaksa clan and their allies have won an unprecedented two-thirds supermajority in the twice-postponed parliamentary elections. The Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa's party secured 145 seats, while they also have the support of 5 other allies. And this, of course, has given Rajapaksa and his brother Gotabaya, who is presently the country's president, a supermajority that is required for bringing about constitutional changes in the 225-member legislature. The strong mandate for the ruling SLPP will now authorize them to amend the Lankan constitution, and with this they would like to restore the sweeping presidential powers which had been curbed in 2015 with constitutional reforms. This win enables the Rajapaksa clan to potentially revoke the country's 19th constitutional amendment, which has been a campaign promise of the Rajapaksas from last year. And India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi was, of course, one of the first world leaders to congratulate Rajapaksa on the outcome of the elections. Responding to Prime Minister Narendra Modi's call, Mahinda Rajapaksa has thanked his Indian counterpart for his congratulatory phone call, as he hopes to work very closely with India to enhance ties. All right, now to give us more perspective as to what this election actually means for Sri Lanka and how this electoral result, will actually define the Sri Lankan politics over the next few years, we're joined in by Mr. Iqbal Athas. He is a political Lanka editor of the Sunday Times. Mr. Athas, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on WION. And let me begin by asking you this. The results are an expected line. Mahinda Rajapaksa, the former president, has now returned as the Prime Minister with a sweeping majority. Give us a sense as to what this electoral result means for Sri Lankan politics.
Yes, there are two aspects from the outcome of the Thursday's elections. One is that Prime Minister Rajapaksa won with an almost two-thirds majority, which was not even expected by them. And the other is the total defeat of the United National Party, which was headed by former Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe. So the immediate task before Prime Minister Rajapaksa now is to have his cabinet sworn in, and we are told that it will be made up of only 26 ministers. Now this Sunday, Prime Minister Rajapaksa will be sworn in a second time, and that will be done by President Rajapaksa, his younger brother, at the Kalaniya Raja Mahavihare, which is an ancient Buddhist temple northeast of Sri Lanka.
Right. Now, a lot of people are looking at this supermajority that has been acquired by Mahinda Rajapaksa now as the Prime Minister, and they're saying that there could be an attempt to now strike down the 19th constitutional amendment of Sri Lanka. What kind of an impact is that likely to have? Does it mean that the curbs that were put on the presidential powers with the 19th constitutional amendment, they would be completely struck down?
Well, no doubt the matter will come up for discussion at some point of time, but as things stand now, the priority 1 and 2 appears to be the economy. They want to put the economy right, particularly after the COVID-19 pandemic had played virtual havoc with it. There's rising unemployment, and also the rupee equivalent to the dollar has shot up, so there are import curbs in force at the moment. So the immediate task for President Rajapaksa and his brother Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa would be to put the economy right on track. And at some point of time, there will definitely be a constitutional assembly or a constitutional council to decide on the format of a new constitution.
And also a lot of people are looking very closely in terms of the direction that Sri Lanka might take under Gotabaya Rajapaksa and also now Mahinda Rajapaksa as the Prime Minister. Under the former Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, we saw an attempt to try and detach Sri Lanka from the economic entanglement that it had got into with China. Are we now looking at a phase where Sri Lanka would like to more closely ally itself with China?
Well, one must make it clear that both the previous Rajapaksa government as well as Mr. Wickremesinghe's own government sort of collaborated very closely with China, although the Rajapaksa government was much more closer. It is the previous government of Ranil Wickremesinghe which brought in the Colombo Port City project, which is a multi-billion rupee project that is facing the Colombo's Galle Face Promenade. So in the light of that, this did not sort of become a campaign issue, or it didn't gain any traction. But from now on, it has to be seen, because there is a marked shifting the new government, that is President Gotabe's government, in the sense that they also don't want to venture into any areas which it appears would be offensive to India.
All right, interesting.
Yes.
Interesting. So that of course will be a tightrope walk that we'll all be looking at. And lastly, Mr. Athas, just before I let you go, this election was of course conducted at a time when the rest of the world is battling the COVID-19 pandemic. It must have been a huge challenge to ensure that people who line up in queues to come and vote would adhere to social distancing. How successful and how easy is it to actually conduct an election in the middle of a pandemic?
It is, and as you know, the polls have been put off twice, and it is on the third occasion that steps were made. Health guidelines were strictly followed at all the polling booths.
All right, we'll have to leave them. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Iqbal Athas, for joining us and getting us all those insights. It now remains to be seen as to which direction the Gotabaya brothers, the Rajapaksa brothers, of course, take Sri Lanka from here on.